A fight with my mother-in-law. My husband hung me from a tree for 3 days to humiliate me. The housekeeper's testimony left the whole family speechless, their faces pale. Ladies and gentlemen, the line between a dutiful daughter-in-law and an avenging angel is a very thin one. On the 3rd day, as I hung from an old oak tree in the searing sun, the last drop of my humanity turned to ash. I wasn't just going to divorce them, I was going to rip off every layer of their fraudulent happiness and make these monsters taste hell on earth. Don't look away. Watch until the end for the sweetest, most delicious revenge. For 3 days, they tied my hands behind my back, dangling me from the branch of an ancien oak. The 100-degree August heat in Connecticut scorched away the last remnants of my humanity. Sweat poured from me, and the raw, bleeding cuts on my wrists burned. The rough rope bit into my flesh every time I gritted my teeth, trying to shift even an inch to find a less agonizing position. The heat rising from the hot flagstone patio seemed to seep into my skin, baking my organs. Just 10 feet away, in the shade of a massive garden umbrella, my dear mother-in-law, Deborah, sat comfortably in a wicker chair. She casually picked up a slice of bright red watermelon, so cold that beads of condensation covered the rind, and took a juicy bite. Sweet juice sprayed everywhere. She slurped it down, then casually spat a few seeds onto the tiled floor. Then she smacked her lips and spoke. The watermelon from Whole Foods is so expensive, and it isn't even that sweet. Besides, she's my daughter-in-law. Broke nobody with the pride of a queen. The ladies at my club, I tell you. She picked up the expensive smartphone I had given her for Mother's Day, and aimed the camera at me, live streaming to the exclusive Facebook group, the Greenwich Garden Circle. Her shrill, self-assured voice filled the next half-minute. Look closely. A street rat who snuck into a mansion and doesn't know her place. An orphan from the foster system whom my Ethan, the CEO of a major tech firm, did the honor of tech's firm marrying. And now, when the family is having a few minor difficulties, and we asked her to transfer her shabby little apartment over to her niece, she dares to make a scene. If I don't teach her a lesson today in the name of her dead parents, people on the street will laugh at us. I looked down at my numb toes, which had long since stopped aching from being on tiptoe for so long. My throat was dry and raw. It wasn't that I couldn't speak. I had simply run out of words for this man. 3 days. During the day, they exposed me to the sun. At night, they locked me in the dog kennel, without a drop of water or a crust of bread. All for one ridiculous reason. I refused to give up my $20 million penthouse in Manhattan. My last asset. The iron gate creaked open, breaking the stifling time tome. Silence. Ethan walked into the yard. He wore a sleek silk shirt and tailored trousers, carrying a leather briefcase, the very picture of a successful executive. Seeing me, exhausted and slumped beneath the oak tree, he paused for a moment. A flicker of unease crossed his eyes, but it was immediately replaced by cold calculation. Mom, have you been keeping her up for too long? She's going to pass out. Then people will see and think God knows what about our family. Ethan unbuttoned his shirt, walked to the table, snatched the glass of iced water Deborah was drinking, and drained it in one gulp. Deborah pursed her lips and shot him a disdainful look. There you go, feeling sorry for your wife already. People like her need to be taught their place. Listen, she's already agreed to hand over the apartment documents. Our Regina is pregnant, she just came back from abroad. And the scumbag who got her pregnant won't acknowledge the child. If she doesn't have a decent apartment registered in her name for the future baby, your sister's life will be ruined. Ethan sighed and walked over to me. He grabbed my chin. His carefully manicured nails dug slightly into my skin. His voice dropped to a low whisper. He tried to sound sympathetic, but every word was a knife in my heart. Amelia, I'm begging you. Be more understanding. You grew up in foster care, you don't have a family. You don't understand how sacred blood ties are. Regina is my sister, and her son will be my nephew. You got that apartment with a lucky windfall, right before our wedding. The family is in a tough spot. Just sign it over to my nephew. You're his aunt. Are you going to sit by and watch him become homeless? I opened my parched eyes and stared into the sanctimonious face of the man I once called my husband. 3 years ago, I thought I had found my safe harbor. A man willing to take the hand of a poor orphan, regardless of material wealth. I naively believed his gentleness was genuine, that he was hiding his identity as the sole heir to a Preston and Global Finance Corporation just to experience pure, unadulterated love. A roof over my head, I whispered. My voice was a raw rasp, but every word was clear. A $20 million penthouse overlooking Central Park, registered in my name. You call that a roof? For your sister's out-of-wedlock child? Shut your mouth. Deborah shrieked, hurling a watermelon rind at me. The hit was hard. The rind slid down my cheek, leaving a raw, bleeding red scratch. My daughter is a top student, and my grandson is a gold digger. Who are you to call him a bastard? Ethan, you see, I told you, this trash has no conscience. If you don't make her sign the papers today, I'll leave her here to die. Ethan's face darkened. He pulled pre-printed papers and a pen from his briefcase, holding them directly in front of my face. His feigned patience vanished, replaced by his true, greedy nature. I've prepared the gift deed. If you sign it today, we'll go back to living in peace and harmony, and I'll love you just as before. If not, don't blame my mother for her cruelty. In this house, my mother's word is law. You live in this house, you eat our food, so you better act like it. I eat your food? I let out a dry, mirthless laugh. It was a bitter, almost tearful sound. I paid the $5,000 monthly food bill out of my own pocket. Your position as CEO was the result of me secretly using my connections to get you projects. Even the suit you're wearing was bought with my credit card. And now I was facing a pack of leeches, who, with no way to stop me, were trying to suck the Pratters. Last thing they thought I had left. Sign it, Ethan snarled, forcing the pen into my hand, ignoring the fact that my wrist was already bleeding from the tightrope. I tilted my head back, looking up at the glaring sky through the green leaves of the oak. No tears fell. Strangely, in that moment, faced with the ultimate baseness, my mind became terrifyingly clear and calm. The submission and patience for the sake of a fake family instantly shattered into 1,000 pieces. They wanted to corner a poor orphan, but they didn't know they had just broken the devil's seal with their own hands. My cup of patience had run dry. The Cinderella game, pretending to be poor to find true love, was over. It was time for them to experience true, desperate regret. Deborah was still engrossed in her glowing phone screen. The glee on her face grew as she read the supportive comments from her equally fake high society friends. But her joy was short-lived. A piercing ringtone interrupted the live stream. It wasn't her phone, but mine, left on the glass table next to a bowl of watermelon. She glanced at the screen, where an unfamiliar number with no caller ID was displayed. Poor people, and their problems. Either debt collectors or scammers, she muttered and hung up. But the person on the other end was persistent. The phone rang again, a second time, a third. Ethan frowned in annoyance. Mom, just answer it, who's being so annoying? Right in the middle of an important conversation. Deborah angrily pressed the answer button and, to assert her authority, put it on speaker. A deep, powerful male voice, trembling with suppressed rage, boomed from the rest-oppressed other end. What the hell are you doing to my daughter? Get her down from there, now. Deborah was stunned for 3 seconds, then burst into loud, shrill laughter. Oh, with your daughter? Sir, did you just escape from a mental asylum? This is Amelia, an orphan. We dragged her out of the mud. Where did she get a fake father like you? Or are you part of her scamming crew? You dare threaten me? I'll call the police right now, and have them lock you up for a long time. You crazy woman, just you wait. The voice on the other end growled like a wounded animal. Wait for it. Deborah sneered, pressed the end button, and tossed my phone into a bucket of ice water. That's how you'll break down and won't be able to call your extortionists anymore. I hung from the tree, my eyes downcast, but the corners of my lips curled into a faint smile. That voice, though I had tried to avoid it for 3 years, how could I not recognize it? It was my father, Arthur Vance, the chairman of the board of Vance Global Holdings. Apparently, while these idle ladies were watching a cheap live stream, the corporation's security and monitoring equipment had detected the humiliating footage of their heiress. The sky was about to fall on Ethan's family. Ethan was getting impatient. That phone call seemed to make him feel that something was off, although he had absolutely no faith that I could get any support. He paced back and forth on the hot flagstones. His polished shoes occasionally kicked at the oak tree's trunk. "Amelia, I'm running out of patience," he growled, shoving the gift deed against my chest. "Don't make me use force. If you don't sign, I'll call the lawyer and file for a unilateral divorce. Then you'll leave this house with nothing. Don't blame me for being cruel." I tiredly and slightly closed my eyes. The sunlight hitting my eyes forced me to squint. "A divorce? Fine. Call the lawyer. Are you getting feisty? You bitch." Deborah spat a watermelon seed on the ground, jumped to her feet, rolled up her sleeves, and lunged toward me. She grabbed a broom from the corner and struck my shins hard. "Don't think a divorce is that simple. Until you sign over the $2 million apartment, you belong to this family, alive or dead. Now I'll help you come to your senses." The blow was so painful it made me flinch, but I gritted my teeth and made no sound. The physical pain was nothing compared to the disgust rising in my throat. I had spent 3 years of my youth escaping the grip of a billion-dollar empire, leaving a luxurious mansion to learn how to bargain at farmers' markets, patiently serving a difficult mother-in-law, and nurturing the career of a hypocritical man. And all of it was repaid with humiliation and contempt. I closed my eyes. Under the 100-degree Connecticut sun, all of Deborah and Ethan's curses began to fade, turning into a humming buzz. I didn't faint. I was waiting for the death knell to ring for this rotten family, and it came. A rude knock on the door, followed by a deafening, earth-shaking roar. Boom! The heavy iron gate of the estate, which Ethan was so proud to show off to his friends, was torn from its hinges. The 2 doors crashed onto the cobblestones with a deafening roar, taking chunks of the brick wall with them. Dust billowed. Deborah screamed hysterically, dropped the broom, and stumbled back, tripping over a chair leg and falling to the ground. Ethan flinched, dropping the papers. All the blood drained from his face. Through the dusty curtain, a massive black Maybach 680 slowly rolled into the yard. 3 large, luxurious SUVs followed closely, their roaring engines filling the grating sticky spacious yard. The gleaming vehicles with their elite license plates, looking like tanks, extinguished all the false pride Ethan's family ever had. The car doors opened in unison. Dozens of men in black suits and sunglasses, their bodies built like solid rock, jumped out. They moved quickly and precisely, instantly securing the entire estate. The midday tranquility was shattered by the suffocating atmosphere of overwhelming power. Marcus, the head of security who had served my father since before I was born, jumped out of the Maybach's front seat. The scarred face of this 50-year-old man was now contorted with rage. He didn't even glance at Ethan and Deborah, but took long strides, like a hungry tiger, and rushed toward the oak tree. "Marcus," I whispered, and my eyes suddenly stung. Not out of self-pity, but from a familiar sense of security I hadn't felt in a long time. "Ma'am, I'm late." Marcus's voice trembled. Pain and anger were mixed in it. With a single, swift motion of a special knife, he severed the thick nylon rope. My body lost its balance and started to fall. But I didn't hit the hot flagstones. Marcus caught me carefully, as if I were a fragile treasure, and immediately took off his black jacket, draping it over my bloodied shoulders. "Sir, madam," Ethan stammered. His eyes were wide. He looked at me, then at the guards, who stood as motionless as bronze statues. "Amelia, who are these people? Collectors or actors you hired to scare me?" "Actors, my ass." A thunderous voice boomed from the back seat of the Maybach. The door opened, and a man in his 60s, with silver hair, wearing a light gray suit, slowly stepped out of the car. An aura of authority, characteristic of a magnate, radiated from him with every step, every heavy thud of his wooden cane on the ground. It was Arthur Vance, my biological father, the man who held the fate of an entire economic empire. Diamonds, gold, and jewels. Deborah struggled to her feet. Her knees were trembling so much that she couldn't keep her balance. You're the scammer who called," she mumbled. My father didn't bother to answer. He approached me. His sad eyes looked at the bloodstains on his daughter's wrists. The hand gripping the cane trembled. Dad, I said softly. That one small word was enough to make Ethan and Deborah's world collapse. Ethan took 3 steps back, his back hitting the wall. His lips trembled. Dad? But you're an orphan, Amelia. Him, Arthur Vance, the chairman of Vance Global, Ethan, who operated in tech and business circles, always trying to break into the upper echelons. How could he not recognize the face that was constantly on the covers of top business magazines? The arrogance and pomposity he had displayed moments ago vanished without a trace, replaced by sheer terror. It felt as if someone had reached inside him and squeezed all his internal organs. The man who intended to suffocate his mother and him had now turned his fingers around and was suffocating himself. My father spun around abruptly. His wooden cane struck the tile floor hard. The sound was piercing. Good. Very good. The Ashford family, you have some nerve. You dare to hang Arthur Vance's own daughter from a tree and bake her alive in the sun. You're tired of living. His roar was like thunder on a clear day. The dozens of guards moved forward in unison. Their menacing appearance terrified Deborah so much that her silk pants became wet and all the color drained from her face. Ethan felt his legs give way, and with a dull thud, he collapsed onto the hot flagstones. I leaned on Marcus's strong arm and slowly stood up straight. The physical pain had not subsided, but the pride of the Vance lineage surged through my veins. I glanced at the pathetic figures of the mother and son with an expression as sharp as a blade. No more submission, no more blind faith in the so-called bonds of marriage. Only cold, unfeeling cruelty remained. Dad, let's go home, I said in a calm voice. A voice so calm, it was frightening. And I'll deal with them myself. The fun is just beginning. The New York sky on that August afternoon was still brilliantly bright, but for Ethan's family, the darkness of Judgment Day had arrived. I slowly opened my eyes. My eyelids were heavy. I was no longer surrounded by the glaring heat and chilling cold under the old oak tree, nor the smell of sweat and harsh curses. Instead, there was a soft golden light and the cool air from a central air conditioning system. The faint scent of lemongrass dispelled the suffocating memories of that afternoon. I was lying on a luxurious bed in the VIP wing of a top private hospital. My father sat beside me, his arms crossed over his chest. His thick eyebrows were knitted into a single line. Seeing that I was awake, his stern expression softened slightly, but his eyes still burned with unquenched anger. Marcus stood silently in the corner of the room, holding a thick file. Amelia, you're awake? The doctor said you have sunstroke and exhaustion, just minor abrasions, but you need to rest. My father took my hand, the one with the IV line. His voice trembled, but the next second he turned to Marcus and growled. Marcus, call the head of investment policy right now. Tomorrow morning, I want my son-in-law's shabby little office to disappear from the map of New York City. And that ugly old hag. Send some men over. Have them knock all her teeth out. Wait, Dad. I whispered, letting go of his hand. I sat up, leaning against the frosted pillows, took a glass of warm water from the table, and took a sip. The water soothed the pain in my throat. My mind was cold and clear, like an iceberg. Destroying Ethan's company immediately would be too easy and merciful for them. For 3 years, I lived like a servant in my own home. I was stripped of everything, my dignity trampled. This pain couldn't be erased with a divine snap of the fingers. I wanted them to feel the loss of everything bit by bit, to watch their world crumble piece by piece. I wanted them to taste the ultimate despair, when everything they believed was theirs was taken away. I chose the path of slowly skinning them alive. Dad, let me handle this, I said calmly, turning to the head of security. Marcus, first. Contact the bank management immediately and permanently block all 5 of the unlimited platinum cards I opened for Ethan. I had just opened these 5 cards with the excuse that it was money from a successful real estate deal, so Ethan could run his business. But what did he spend the money on? He bought Hermes bags for his mistress, paid for lavish parties to impress partners, and transferred millions to England to fund Sister Regina's debauched lifestyle. Tonight, I would cut off his first financial lifeline. Second, I continued. My gaze turned icy. The Greenwich estate is in my name. Call the estate management company on my behalf as the owner. Instruct them to cut the power immediately. Shut off the main water valve and disable all internet lines. The reason? Major renovations. Not a single drop of water is to enter that house without my order. Yes, ma'am, Marcus nodded. His fingers were already quickly dialing a number. And my father suddenly added one more thing. The corner of his mouth curved into the cold smirk of an old fox in the world of big business. I will make sure they are completely cut off. I will instruct my secretary to send a notice to every major investor and banker in New York. Anyone who dares to lend this family so much as a dime is officially declaring war on Vance Global. I smiled in approval. The net was cast. Now all I had to do was sit back and watch the show. I asked the nurse for a bowl of clam chowder and leisurely opened my iPad. The screen quickly connected to the secret surveillance camera system I had installed throughout the Greenwich estate a month ago, when I started to suspect Ethan's financial reports were fraudulent. The clock on the screen read 8 p.m. Ethan's dusty white Mercedes pulled up to the estate's gate. He and Deborah got out, looking tired and scared after a day on the run, fearing my father's men would return for revenge. The entire massive, 5,000 square foot estate was shrouded in complete darkness. Where is Rosa, the housekeeper? Why hasn't she turned on the lights to welcome the homeowners? What about the air conditioning? Is she trying to bake us alive? Deborah shrieked. She had just entered the house, drenched in sweat. She flipped a switch. Click, click. Nothing happened. Ethan took out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and frowned. The power is out. There are no rolling blackouts in an elite residential area. He called the management company. Through the camera, I watched his face turn from red to pale, then from pale to flushed red. What do you mean the owner requested it to be turned off? I'm her husband. Turn it back on immediately. Hello. Hello. Damn it, they hung up. Just then, the housekeeper, Rosa, came down from the top floor. Unlike her usual timid self, she had a large backpack on her shoulders and was dressed neatly. Seeing Deborah and Ethan, she silently took off her apron and threw it on the floor right at her mother-in-law's feet. What are you doing, huh? You're making a mess. Deborah's eyes widened. Fend for yourselves, Rosa replied loudly, standing up straight and shaking off all her pent-up frustration. Mrs. Amelia just wrote to me saying I'm fired, and what's more, she gave me $10,000 to go home and settle down. She said this house is about to turn into a garbage dump, and if I stay, I'll starve. Goodbye, I'm leaving. With that, Rosa walked out the door, with her head held high, ignoring the curses that followed her. That night was a sleepless one, literally, for these arrogant people. The 100-degree heat of the day, absorbed by the concrete walls of the estate, now radiated a suffocating heat, like an oven. No fans, no air conditioning. Deborah rushed to the bathroom to wash her face, but no matter how she turned the faucet, not a drop of water came out. The main water valve was shut off. The Wi-Fi was down. Even the cell service in the area was spotty behind the thick, soundproof walls. Desperate and hot, Deborah went out onto the balcony to search for a signal. She grabbed her phone and started calling her high society friends, begging for money, or a place to stay for the night. Hello, Catherine, my dear, we're in a bit of trouble. Could we stay the night? What? Who are you calling a fraud? Hello? She called a second time or a third. Some didn't answer. Some, as soon as they heard her voice, unleashed the most vicious insults, cursing her for daring to touch the Vance Global heiress's diamonds and gold and endangering their business interests. The entire New York high society had isolated her and her son as if quarantining her in a plague zone. On the iPad screen, I saw Ethan with his head bowed, sitting on the expensive leather sofa, now hot and sticky with sweat. He was desperately running his hands through his hair, constantly glancing at the playing messages from the bank. Transaction declined, card blocked. He was completely cut off from his money. Around 2 a.m., the air became thick, the smell of sweat and fear mingling. Deborah sat on the floor, fanning herself with a tattered paper fan and muttering something like a madwoman. The monster who wanted to hang me from the oak tree during the day now looked pathetic and disgusting, like a toad floundering in a drying puddle. I chuckled softly, closed the iPad, and lay down on the soft bed. Sleep had never been so sweet and peaceful. Enjoy the darkness, my dear ex-husband and esteemed mother-in-law, because tomorrow, when the sun rises, I will personally deliver your worst nightmare to your doorstep. The next morning, I woke up to the bright sunbeams shining through the thin curtains of the VIP room. Unlike the miserable, exhausted, and helpless state under the oak tree yesterday, today, I was completely reborn. I was Amelia Vance, the sole heiress of Vance Global Holdings. I stood before a large mirror and applied a bright, bold red lipstick. The shade I hadn't dared to wear for 3 years, for fear my mother-in-law would call me vulgar. My long black hair, usually held back in a plastic clip before bed, was now sleek and flowed proudly over the shoulders of my tailored black power suit. The sharp clicks of my stiletto heels echoed on the marble floor, creating a cold, decisive rhythm. Today, I was going to collect my debt. At exactly 9 a.m., a gleaming black Maybach 680 pulled up in front of a skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan, where Ethan's proudly owned tech company was located. 4 burly bodyguards in black suits, led by Marcus, stepped out of the car, clearing a path for me to the main entrance. The receptionist, who used to look down on me as a country woman bringing a packed lunch, shrank back in fear, dropping the lipstick she was applying when she saw my imposing entourage. "No need to announce me," I said coldly, and walked straight to the VIP elevator, reserved for the management. At that moment, the atmosphere in the 20th floor boardroom was extremely tense. Standing in the hallway, I could clearly hear Ethan's desperate cries coming through the expensive oak doors. "Gentlemen, shareholders, please calm down. This is just a technical glitch at the bank. The cash flow from our angel investor will be restored this morning. I swear on my honor as CEO." Ethan's voice was hoarse and trembling with panic. After a sleepless night in the sweltering, powerless, waterless estate, he looked pathetic. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was a mess, and dark circles of desperation were visible under his sunken eyes. "How much is your honor worth if 5 partner banks simultaneously notified us this morning about freezing the company's accounts?" The senior shareholder slammed his fist on the table. "How do you explain that we don't have a single cent to pay our debts today? Where did all the company's money go?" At that moment, I calmly raised my hand. Marcus understood without a word, stepped forward, and with a powerful kick, blew the boardroom door open. The hinges squeaked and jammed. Crash. "Everyone in." The room turned toward the door. The noisy atmosphere immediately fell silent. It became so quiet that only the raster.com hum of the air conditioner could be heard. Ethan, standing at the head of the DOP table, dripping with sweat, his eyes wide as if he had just seen a ghost. "Amelia, what is this? What are you doing here? And what are you wearing?" He stammered, his voice trembling. The confidence he had just moments ago had vanished without a trace. He glanced at the army of black-suited bodyguards behind me and swallowed hard. I smiled, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. I walked slowly, gracefully, to the only empty chair at the head of the table and sat down, crossing my legs, like a queen surveying her domain. "Why shouldn't I be here?" I raised an Elle Tepano eyebrow. My voice was clear and articulate, but it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. "I came to see how our esteemed CEO will explain the disappearance of the company's funds." "Are you crazy? This is a closed board meeting, not a place for hysterical women. Security, get her out of here." Ethan roared, trying to save face in front of the shareholders, but no one moved. The shareholders looked at me and then at him with suspicion and disapproval. "CEO, Ethan," I used the title he coveted, but with a tone of bitter sarcasm. "You just mentioned an angel investor, didn't you? What a coincidence. I know this fund very well." I waved my hand. Marcus immediately opened his black leather briefcase, took out a thick stack of documents stamped in red, and threw them onto the middle of the glass table. The briefcase slid across and stopped right in front of Ethan. "Shareholders, you must have always wondered, what blind guardian angel has been pouring money into a fledgling IT company with no strings attached? A company with disastrous financial reports for 3 years? Well, I glanced around the room, tapping my manicured fingers on the table. "Today, I am pleased to introduce you to the person behind this angel trust, the sole and true creditor of the company. That would be me, Amelia Vance, née Davis, the wife of this trembling CEO." The room erupted in gasps of Astonishment. The shareholders rushed to the documents, frantically flipping through the pages, checking the signatures and seals. Ethan was frozen, his knees buckling, his face ashen. He stumbled back, bumping into the edge of the table. His lips moved silently. No, it can't be. You, this fund, you, the orphan from the mud that he and his mother were going to bake to death yesterday. I smirked and pulled a gold-plated USB stick from my purse, plugging it into the laptop connected to the projector. Transaction charts and scanned contracts immediately appeared on the large screen. And here, gentlemen, is the real reason for the company's bankruptcy. I stood up and pointed a laser at the glaring numbers on the screen. Your CEO, Ethan, is not as brilliant as he claims. For the past 3 years, he has created dozens of fake contracts with shell companies registered in his relatives' names. The total amount he siphoned from the angel investment fund and pocketed exceeds $50 million. You're lying, Amelia, don't you dare slander me. Ethan tried to counter, but the large beads of sweat rolling down his forehead betrayed his lie. Slander? I burst out laughing. It was a joyful, triumphant laugh. I walked closer and threw a stack of photos and invoices in his face. The papers scattered across the floor. And what is this? Invoices for 3 limited edition Hermes Birkin bags, each worth several $100,000, sent to the luxury apartment of his mistress, Mira. Or this, a monthly bank transfer statement of $50,000? And sent to England, to your dear sister, for her wild life of drugs and frilled parties. And let's not forget the diamond invoices for your mother, who loves to preach to everyone. Every photo, every scattered invoice on the floor was like a nail in Ethan's coffin. Every word I spoke was like a sledgehammer blow to his chest, shattering the false image of a successful and respectable man he had so vainly built. The shareholders were furious. They jumped out of their seats, banging on the table, calling him a swindler and scum, and demanding that the police be called immediately. From a powerful CEO, he had suddenly become a dirty rat, kicked out onto the street with a huge debt and the threat of prison. The illusion of power he had clung to his whole life was crushed to dust by me. Unable to withstand the immense pressure, Ethan's legs gave way. Thud, he collapsed in front of the shareholders, then, forgetting all his dignity, crawled on all fours. He grabbed the lapels of my suit and, looking at me with red, tear-filled eyes, begged. Amelia, my wife, I was wrong. The devil got into me. Mom made me do it. Regina kept demanding it. I beg you, for the years we were together, for the times I made you soup when you were sick, give me a chance. I'll pay back the $50 million. I'll work my fingers to the bone to give you everything. Just don't send me to prison, Amelia. He sobbed. Tears and snot streamed down his face. He tried to hug my legs. There was a glass of water on the table next to me. I coldly took a step back and swung my leg. Crash. The powerful kick not only shattered the glass, but also hit Ethan right in the shoulder, sending him sprawling on the floor. Shards flew everywhere, and water splashed on his face. This broken glass, like our relationship, is shattered, broken, and will never be put back together again. I looked at him with utter contempt. My voice was as sharp as a razor. Work your fingers to the bone to pay it back. You won't have the chance. Wait for the court summons and prepare to eat prison food. Ex-husband. I turned around, the sound of my heels echoing proudly in silence. I walked out of the courtroom, leaving behind the desperate cries and pleas of a man who had fallen to the very bottom of hell. One down. Now, it was his precious mother's turn, who at this very moment was showing off my stolen belongings. After her resounding victory over her terrible husband, right in his own company, my watch showed exactly 2 p.m. The August heat in New York had not subsided at all. I sat in the cool Maybach, sipping, sparkling, mineral water and smiling to myself. One down, but the play wasn't over. Last night, Deborah and Ethan had endured a horrific night without power and water. Any normal person would be worried and start looking for a way out. But knowing her pathological vanity and penchant for showing off, I was sure of what Deborah would do. She would certainly try to cling to the last remnants of her status in high society. At exactly 3 p.m., these fake ladies had an appointment for afternoon tea in the fastest VIP room of the Plaza, the most luxurious hotel in the capital. The Plaza Hotel greeted me with the sparkling light of crystal chandeliers and the gentle melody of a piano. I walked along the red-carpeted corridor. Behind me were Marcus and 3 auditors in formal gray suits, carrying thick briefcases. The doorman gently opened the door to the tea room. The scent of rose essential oil and Earl Grey tea filled the room. Deborah sat in the middle of a round table covered with a pristine white lace tablecloth, surrounded by stands of tablecloth. Delicate French pastries. She had applied a thick layer of powder to hide dark circles under her eyes from a sleepless night. Her lips were painted a garish red. She wore a silk velvet dress that looked very expensive but was wrinkled from a night on the hard floor. And my God, the first thing I noticed was the thumb-sized emerald necklace resting casually on her plump neck. It was my birthday gift from my father, worth over $1 million. I had kept it in the safe. And that old thief, while they were torturing me, had broken into the safe and taken it out to show off to the world. Oh girls, don't worry so much. Deborah's loud voice drowned out the piano. My Ethan is signing a multi-billion-dollar contract today, and he'll solve any minor issues with the Grobet Bank in a flash. And my daughter-in-law? I taught her a lesson she'll never forget. Now she's as docile as a puppy. Look. This morning she brought me this emerald necklace. Herself to apologize. The ladies around her oohed and ahed. The necklace is indeed beautiful. It's just a shame it's on a thief's neck. My cold voice shattered the fake atmosphere. Everyone turned around. Deborah's eyes widened at the sight of me. A macaron fell from her hand into her teacup, splashing tea everywhere. She stammered. Her face turned pale. What are you doing here? Who allowed you to dress like that? And come in here? I walked over slowly, my heels clicking proudly on the wooden floor. Why shouldn't I be here? As a Plaza Diamond cardholder, I have the right to invite my audit team for tea. Take a seat. The ladies glanced at each other, then at the professional team behind me. Marcus coldly stepped forward, blocking the only exit from the hall. Deborah. I put my hands on the table and leaned toward her, muttering through my teeth. The necklace you're wearing is a natural Colombian emerald, bought at a Hong Kong auction for $1 million. The ownership papers are in the name of TTTT, Amelia Vance. You stole it from my safe while I was being tortured. Just for this grand larceny? How many years in prison do you think you'll get? Deborah clutched the necklace in panic. You're lying. This is mine. I bought it. How did you buy it? With the credit card I blocked yesterday. I grinned and with one swift movement, yanked the necklace from her neck. The clasp broke. She stumbled and almost fell. I turned to the stunned women. Ladies, you sit here and praise her. But do you know you're friends with a professional con artist? I snapped my fingers. The auditors immediately opened their briefcases and handed each woman a copy of a detailed report. First, I held up my index finger. My voice was firm. Mrs. Kensington, the Hermes Kelly bag you bought from Deborah last month for $50,000. Have you checked its authenticity? It's a fake from the market, worth no more than $200. She sold my real bag and gave you a fake one. A stout woman in sunglasses, Mrs. Kensington, shrieked, grabbed the bag from her chair, and began to examine it, her face contorting with rage. Second, I threw a stack of bank statements on top of her. The table. Mrs. Sterling, Mrs. Preston, you each just invested $500,000 in the IT sector. Ethan's company, on her advice, bought preferred stock, right? I'm here to share some sad news. That company officially went bankrupt this morning at 10 a.m. because its director embezzled $50 million from investors. Of course, your million is gone too, along with her son's debts. Now he's sobbing in his office, waiting for the police to handcuff him. The atmosphere in the VIP room was chaotic. The room froze for 3 seconds, then exploded like a bomb. Piercing screams erupted. The entire veneer of high society crumbled. My $50,000? Oh, old Mrs. Preston, in a fit of rage, grabbed a cup of hot tea and threw it straight in their faces. Deborah, she cheated me out of $5,000 with that bag. Give me back my money, you scammer. Mrs. Kensington lunged at her and pulled her hair. The whole group of high society women pounced on her. Some slapped, some kicked, some scratched with their nails. Deborah struggled in their midst. Her desperate cries echoed among the blows. Her face was swollen, her hair falling out in clumps. The expensive silk dress was torn to shreds, revealing flabby, bruised flesh. "Help me, Amelia. Tell them to stop. Mother is asking you." "I was wrong," Deborah screamed, crawling toward me like a beaten dog. I took a half step back so her dirty hands wouldn't touch my designer dress. I crossed my arms over my chest and coldly watched her writhe at my feet. The arrogance she had displayed while sitting under the oak tree all day, eating watermelon and lecturing me, was completely gone. Now, she was nothing but a pathetic creature, stripped of all masks, all her filth exposed to the very people she had always tried to seem important to. "Stop," I commanded softly. The ladies reluctantly backed away, panting, still glaring at their victim. I bent down, grabbed Deborah's chin, and muttered through my teeth, "Dear mother-in-law, how does it feel to be humiliated and beaten in front of everyone? Doesn't this remind you of anything? Is it similar to how you treated me for 3 years, and especially yesterday? But I'm not hitting you. I'm letting your greed and vanity slap you in the face. You made this mess, now you clean it up." I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Deborah sobbing, surrounded by hungry creditors ready to tear her limb from limb. The New York sun was beginning to set. The long day of sweet revenge was not yet over, because I knew that a greedy man like Ethan, when cornered, would play his last, most vicious card in the underground parking garage. Leaving the plaza, as the red sunset dyed the treetops, a smooth black Maybach 680 took me back to headquarters, the headquarters of Vance Global Holdings. The clock on the dashboard read 5:30 p.m. Inside the car, silence reigned, the scent of sandalwood filling the space, a stark contrast to the chaos and humiliation Deborah was experiencing. The car slowly descended the ramp into the underground parking garage. There was VIP parking on level B2, a vast space for thousands of people. The ceiling was high, illuminated by the Utah cool white light of LED lamps. The silence was broken only by the smooth hum of the B-12 armored vehicle's engine. Just as Marcus began to turn into the crosses at Chairman's reserved spot, something unexpected happened. 2 figures jumped out from behind a gray concrete pillar about 10 meters away, blocking the Maybach's path. Marcus reacted with lightning speed, slamming on the brakes. The tires screeched, leaving 2 black marks on the epoxy floor. The nose of the car stopped just a step away from the 2 madmen's feet. I squinted through the perstot thick bulletproof glass. The corners of my lips curled into a sarcastic smile. It was none other than Ethan and Deborah, but their appearance was so pathetic that people on the street might have mistaken them for 2 beaten-up beggars. Deborah, a high society lady just a day ago, now had disheveled hair. Her scalp was bleeding from the cuts her friends had inflicted. Her face was swollen like a pancake, her eyes narrowed. Her expensive dress was torn to shreds, revealing her underwear. She could barely stand, clinging to Ethan's arm and moaning. Ethan looked no better. The brilliant director of the morning had become a demoless beggar. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, the buttons torn off. His eyes were bloodshot, the crazed look of a cornered animal. More importantly, in his right hand, he clutched a fruit knife about 8 inches long. The long blade glinted under the cold lights, creating a sinister look. He held a crumpled file in his left hand. "Amelia, get out of the car," Ethan said hoarsely, stabbing the hood of the multi-million-dollar armored car with the knife's handle. "You think you'll live in peace after destroying my company and humiliating my mother? Get out of the car." Marcus, scowling, reached under his seat for his retractable baton. I was about to teach that insolent fool a lesson, but I had already set a trap for him. Marcus sat there, calmly locking the doors. "Let's see what a cornered dog can do." I leaned down to the console and activated the loudspeaker system. My voice echoed through the empty parking garage, clear, calm, and full of authority. "I'm listening, CEO Ethan. You brought a knife to headquarters, to the apartment, you brought diamonds, gold, and jewels to block my way. You want to add attempted murder to your embezzlement charges? 15 years in prison isn't enough for you." Hearing my voice, Ethan grew even more furious. He brandished the stack of papers in front of the windshield. "Don't try to scare me. I have nothing left to lose," he growled. Listen. This is our prenuptial agreement, signed by you 3 years ago. I thought, how foolish of me. I had replaced the secret part with an addendum. It clearly states that in the event of a divorce, all property in Amelia Vance's name, including real estate, like your $20 million penthouse, will be split 50-50 with Ethan Ashford. That's it. From the very beginning, he had planned to take everything from me. It's a pity for him that my innocence had long since died in his rotten family. Deborah, hearing about the money, flinched and screamed. That's right. You want to kick us out onto the street, you scum? Split the assets. You have a whole corporation. You have to give the house to my grandson. You have to pay off Ethan's $50 million debt. If not, I'll expose everything online. I'll turn you into a rich but evil woman who drove her husband's family to the brink of bankruptcy. I burst out laughing. The clear, ringing laughter echoed through the parking garage, bouncing off the concrete walls and making them tremble. You've calculated it. All very well. $10 million for half the penthouse plus paying off your $50 million debt in exchange for a smooth divorce. If not, you'll use this knife to disfigure my face or kill me right here. I analyzed it slowly. My voice turned from mocking to cold. But, Ethan, you're the CEO of a tech company, and you're so behind the times. Have you ever heard of self-erasing ink? Ethan's hand, holding the stack of papers, froze. His bloodshot eyes widened, and he quickly glanced at the bottom corner of the Tapper's document. 3 years ago, when you gave me this contract, I had a bad feeling. That's why the pen I used to sign this extortionate contract was a pen with evaporating ink. I calmly leaned back in the leather seat. This ink lasts for a maximum of 48 hours, then disappears completely, leaving no trace. Open your eyes and see what's where my signature should be. Ethan frantically flipped to the last page. Under the bright lights, the space under the line for Amelia Vance was still pristine. No signature, no fingerprints. The paper he thought was his last lifeline turned out to be just scrap paper. No, it can't be, Ethan cried out in despair. His hands trembled, crumpling the contract and throwing it to the floor. His last hope had been mercilessly and completely extinguished. He collapsed, but this despair quickly turned into the seventh madness of a cornered predator. You bitch, you tricked me? I'll kill you. I'll stab you. Ethan roared and, like a wild animal, jumped onto the hood of the Maybach. He began to frantically slash at the windshield right in front of me. Clang, clang. The piercing slashes and sparks flew, but the flimsy blade couldn't leave even a scratch on the high-grade bulletproof glass. The blade dulled, bent, and then snapped back, cutting his cheek. Below, Deborah screamed and sobbed, slapping her thighs. Kill her, son, kill this venomous snake. Just then, the blare of police sirens thundered down the ramp. Red and blue lights flashed relentlessly on the gray walls. 3 SWAT vans, sirens, wailing, roared into the parking garage and screeched to a halt, forming a tight circle. Marcus turned around and nodded at me. Calling the police was part of the plan I had warned him about. As we left the city, dozens of armored warriors, carrying pistols and shields, poured out of the vans. Drop your weapon, stay still, do not move, hands behind your head. The commander's order boomed through a megaphone. Ethan, standing on the hood, looked at the broken knife in his hand, then at the black barrels pointed at him. His legs gave way. He slid off the smooth hood and collapsed onto the cold floor. 2 officers immediately rushed to his side and pinned him face down. Cold handcuffs clamped around his wrists. Deborah did not escape her fate either. 2 female officers twisted her arms and dragged her away. She struggled and screamed. Help! The police are arresting innocent people. My ungrateful daughter-in-law framed her mother-in-law. You'll get your money, I said, lowering the window just 2 inches so my voice would be clear. Officers, please record this, I said coldly. These 2, armed with a deadly weapon, blocked my way, extorted me for $10 million, and attempted to destroy property. The car's dashcam and parking cameras have recorded everything. Ethan was lifted up. His face was right next to my car window. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Terror and regret were plain in his eyes. Amelia, I'm begging you, forgive me. I pressed a button, and the window slowly rose, cutting off his pathetic pleas. The fake contract was gone. The last mask had been ripped from them. From now on, what awaited them was not the shade of an oak tree, but the endless darkness behind bars. The next morning, the fourth day after the incident under the oak tree, public opinion exploded, but in a completely different way than I had anticipated. A cleverly edited video from Deborah's live stream began to spread like wildfire on major forums and social media. The people behind this, probably a bot army Ethan hired with his last remaining alibi funds before his arrest, had shamelessly twisted everything under sensational headlines like Diamond Harris destroys husband's poor family with money, or rich daughter-in-law fakes torture to imprison husband. Internet users launched a fierce attack on me, cursing me. They called me someone who could buy anything with money, an ungrateful daughter, a schemer. Malicious comments flooded my personal page and the Vance Global page, calling for a boycott and demanding justice for the poor. I sat in my spacious 50th floor office, leisurely sipping a cup of hot tea. Marcus stood nearby, his face red with anger. "Ma'am, they're going too far. Help me take down these garbage websites and find the ringleaders of this cyberbullying." I put down my cup, shook my head, and smiled mysteriously. "Marcus, public opinion is like a raging river. If you dam it up, it will only grow stronger and break the dam. The best way to handle the flow of information is to guide it in the direction you need. They want to destroy me with public opinion. Then let public opinion destroy them." I tapped my fingers on the desk. "Release everything. Uncut, not a single second edited." 10 minutes later, a single post appeared on my official account. No lengthy explanations, just 3 large files. File 1. The entire unedited footage from the security cameras in the garden of the Greenwich estate. No editing, no sad music, just the raw, unedited footage of me being hung from the oak tree for 3 days. Deborah's shrill curses, Ethan's cold voice forcing me to sign away $20 million. And the scene of her calmly eating watermelon and spitting seeds at me while I was fainting from the heat. These authentic sounds were like a slap in the face to those who had just been defending the poor. File 2. A recording of a secret conversation between Ethan and Deborah in their bedroom a day before the Round incident. Ethan's sinister voice. "Mom, just tie her up. Starve her for a few days until she goes crazy. Then, we'll force her to sign a palliace confession stating she's mentally ill. I'll become her legal guardian. All her shares, diamonds, gold, and the penthouse will be ours. If she dies, no one will know she's an orphan." File 3. A short video of Deborah in the kitchen, unhappy with the soup, pouring a hot ladle over the housekeeper Rosa, then hitting her. A woman 10 years her senior was slapped in the face with a slipper. Social media froze for a few seconds, then a real earthquake hit. The chaotic flow of public opinion reversed 180 degrees with dizzying speed. The people who had just expressed sympathy for Ethan and Deborah immediately became the harshest judges. Online, the community's outrage erupted like a wildfire fanned by the wind. "My God, tigers don't eat their own cubs. And what kind of animals are these?" The tech CEO tried to have his wife committed to a mental hospital to steal her assets. "People like that should be shot. Lock them up and throw away the key. Look at how this old hag beats up the housekeeper. The crime must be punished." But the real punishment was not limited to phone screens. That same day, Deborah was released pending trial for health reasons. When she left the pre-trial detention center, there was no Maybach or Mercedes waiting for her. She walked to find a taxi, but no taxi driver or rideshare driver would stop, as they recognized her as the most famous face on the internet. "Look, it's the evil mother-in-law from the video," a fruit vendor shouted from the sidewalk. A crowd immediately gathered around Deborah. Housewives, taxi drivers, students all looked at her with utter disgust. "How cruel. Hang your daughter-in-law from a tree. What about you?" Splat. A ripe tomato hit her forehead. The bright red juice ran down her pale, powdered cheeks. She showed no mercy to the orphan. "You animal scum." A bag of rotten eggs thrown from a nearby store hit her chest. A disgusting stench arose. Deborah panicked, covered her face, and tried to run, but the crowd grew larger. They cornered her. They didn't hit her with sticks, but the insults and garbage thrown at her hurt more than any blow. She wandered the streets of New York. Her silk dress was caked with mud, eggshells, and ketchup. The heel of her designer shoe broke. She had to throw them away and walk barefoot on the hot asphalt. The boutiques she used to brag about, the friends she used to have tea with, now shunned her as if she had the plague. On the other side of the city, in his cell, Ethan was no better. News of his complete downfall and the video of his conspiracy reached the prison authorities. Criminals have their own code, and those who betray and abuse their wives are despised above all. "Hey, CEO, they say you wanted to put your wife in a nut house?" a tattooed inmate said, looking at Ethan with a cold stare. Ethan cowered in the corner of the damp cell. His lips were purple with fear. He stared out the small barred window, where the sun was setting. He realized that the legal punishment was just the beginning. The punishment from public opinion, from the hatred of his own kind. This was his life sentence, a sentence that would last for the rest of his and his mother's lives. I sat in the car, looking through the tinted window at the chaotic crowd on the tinted street. No mercy. Evil must be punished. The price they paid was just the first installment on the huge debt they had taken from conscience and humanity. On Friday, the New York sky was covered with gray storm clouds, heralding a downpour that would wash away the scorching heat of the recent heat wave. I sat behind the one-way glass of a special interrogation room, holding a cup of hot tea. On the other side of the glass were Ethan and Deborah, the two people who had been my only family for 3 years. Now they looked like two cornered wild animals, exhausted and full of hatred. The investigators decided to conduct a confrontation to clarify all the details. It was the first time they had met face to face in shackles. Seeing her son in a baggy prison uniform, Deborah, who was on restricted movement, rushed to hug him, but Ethan coldly pushed her away. There was no trace of filial affection in his eyes, only a deep, bone-deep hatred. "Ethan, my son, how did you end up like this?" Deborah sobbed. Her face was swollen from the beating, covered in bruises and scratches. "It's all because of Amelia. She ruined our family. She put me here." "Shut up." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "Stop blaming her for everything. If it wasn't for your greed, if you hadn't pushed me to get that penthouse for Regina, I wouldn't have done it. If you hadn't orchestrated the hanging in this stream, would Arthur Vance have found us?" Deborah was speechless. You dare talk to me like that?" "I did. Everything for this family, for your future, your sister's future, and for myself." Ethan burst into crazed laughter. "You did it for your own vanity. You spent the Delpalesh company's money on your fake friends. Mrs. Millionaire over here was buying diamonds while I was racking my brain over reports for the auditors. You were the one who told me Amelia was an orphan and could be beaten and humiliated without anyone knowing. Now I'm facing 15 years in prison and a $50 million debt. You think you can just walk away from this?" He turned to the investigator. "Officer, I'll tell you everything. The idea of hanging Amelia from the tree was entirely my mother's. She tied her up with her own hands, she starved her with her own hands. I was just a witness, but I couldn't do anything because she threatened to commit suicide. And most of the embezzled money from the company was transferred to her personal accounts for shopping and for Regina in England. I was simply manipulated. A traitor, an ungrateful son." Deborah flew at Ethan, trying to scratch him. "You dare blame everything on me? Who signed the fake contracts? Who spent money on a mistress and then complained? The company had no money, so I could go demand an apartment from Amelia? Officer, he's lying. He was the main mastermind. He wanted to lock his daughter-in-law in a mental hospital. He told me to push her to the edge." The mother and son fought fiercely. Ethan pushed his mother away, and she fell. She grabbed his collar, screaming the worst curses a mother could have for her son. Family values, motherly love, honor all shattered into filthy, stinking pieces in the face of the truth. I stood behind the glass and silently watched this dogfight. My heart felt no pain. On the contrary, I felt a strange sense of peace. For 3 years, I tried to cultivate something human in them. I believed my submission would melt their hearts. But look, when the benefits disappeared, when they had to face the law, all that love turned out to be so fragile and dirty. Marcus. I called softly, my eyes never leaving the struggling figures. You see, anything that isn't built on kindness will eventually destroy itself. Ma'am, do you want to end this confrontation? Marcus asked sympathetically. Let them continue, Marcus, I sipped my tea. Let them expose their darkest corners. The more they bite each other, the fairer the verdict will be for each of them. The bloody battle continued. Deborah screamed that Ethan had secretly sold my engagement ring to gamble on the stock market and lost everything. However, Ethan exposed that Deborah had stolen church donations to gamble at a casino. Their dirtiest secrets were laid bare to bring each other down. I smiled faintly. Tomorrow, this testimony will be the basis for the official report. Ethan's $50 million debt will never be paid, and Deborah will have no way to escape the charges of organizing torture and trafficking. Stolen. The rain finally came, washing the dirt from the city. But the stains on this family's souls would probably not be washed away by an ocean. I stood up and adjusted my jacket. The legal battle was almost over, but I still had one more thing to do. To completely destroy the Greenwich estate, the place that held the most horrifying memories of my life. A month after the mutual accusations during the Tuel accusations, interrogation, the first trial in the case of fraud, intentional injury, and property damage, took place at the New York Supreme Court. The morning was gloomy. A light rain was falling, as if to wash away the stains of this 3-year family tragedy. I sat in the victims section, wearing a pristine white suit and my hair in a neat bun, calmly observing the proceedings. Across the room, in the dock, Ethan and Deborah looked 10 years older. Ethan had lost weight, his cheeks sunken. The baggy prison uniform seemed to have swallowed the man who was once a dapper CEO. Deborah had lost all her usual grace. Her face was dark, her eyes dull with horror and humiliation. The court delivered its verdict. Ethan Ashford was sentenced to 15 years in prison for fraud, large-scale embezzlement, and complicity in causing bodily harm. His $50 million debt, and all his assets, too, were confiscated to pay damages. Deborah Ashford received a 6-year prison sentence for organizing illegal detention and torture, as well as trafficking in stolen goods. When the judge's gavel sounded, ending the trial, Ethan collapsed into his chair, covered his face with his hands, and sobbed. Deborah screamed and fainted. I stood up, nodded to the court, and left without a trace of pity. Justice had been served. Now it was my turn to exact my punishment. That same day, Marcus, myself, and a convoy of construction equipment arrived at the Greenwich estate. The house I once called my home, where the very oak tree had witnessed my tears and blood, now stood silent and cold, like an abandoned tomb. On my orders, all of the Ashford family's belongings, from designer clothes to the cheap vases Deborah had passed off as antiques, were thrown onto the process sidewalk. They lay in a jumble in the mud, like a pile of industrial waste. Deborah, after recovering from the trial, was allowed to retrieve her personal belongings under the supervision of the police and my security forces. She approached the gate and, seeing this scene, let out a hysterical scream. "Amelia, you devil! How dare you throw my things onto the street? This is the sweat and blood of the Ashford family." She lunged toward a bag lying on the ground, but Marcus blocked her way. I got out of the armored car. The wind from the Hudson River blew the hem of my coat. I looked at her with eyes as cold as a winter lake. "Sweat and blood. You're mistaken. This is my blood and my tears. The tears of the servants you beat, and the shareholders your son cheated. In this pile of trash, there isn't a single penny your family earned honestly." Deborah looked at me, her lips trembling. "You've taken everything. You sent Ethan to prison. Why can't you just leave us alone?" "Because this house has been desecrated," I replied coldly, turning to the Grinxit excavator operator. "Start it up." The roar of the engine shattered the silence. The huge excavator swung its steel bucket and delivered a powerful blow to the excavator glass wall of the first floor. The sound of shattering glass, of crumbling concrete. Deborah was speechless. Her eyes widened as she watched the $20 million estate, the dream of a luxurious life, crumble before her eyes. The second floor, the third floor, the luxurious rooms, the crystal chandeliers, all were turning into rubble and dust. "No, stop. Mine. It's all mine." Deborah madly rushed toward the rubble, but the seat, police held her back. The shock of the loss was too much for her to bear. She started to giggle, then burst into loud laughter, clutching the broken bricks to her chest. Gold. My gold. Ethan, Mom found the gold. She laughed, tears and dirt streaking her face. Her eyes became vacant. Witnessing her dream shatter into reality, Deborah had completely lost her mind. I looked at the ruins. My heart was heavy. The old oak tree had also been uprooted. I didn't want to leave any trace of my humiliation here. Marcus, clear everything here, and after leveling the area, plant a large field of crops at sunflowers for me, I said, turning around and getting into the car. A chapter, all of my old life, officially closed with the thunderous crash of crumbling concrete, but the cleanup was not yet complete. The youngest child of this evil family had flown back from abroad to claim her rights. It was my husband's sister, Regina. I would be waiting for her in my triple-lid office with another, no less surprising, gift. The clock on my desk read 10 a.m. on Monday. A week had passed since the demolition of the Greenwich estate, and Deborah had been officially admitted to the psychiatric ward of the prison. Hospital. Vance Global Headquarters was in an uproar because of an uninvited guest. You have no right to keep me out. My brother is the CEO, and my sister-in-law is the owner of this corporation. Do you have any idea who I am? A shrill, arrogant scream, characteristic of the entire Ashford clan, echoed from the 50th floor reception area. I put down my pen, leaned back in my chair, and took a sip of tea. My dear Regina had finally returned from England. She had no idea that her brother's 5-year prison sentence and her mother's madness had plunged their Rieni family into an abyss of darkness forever. Bang! The office door burst open. Regina stormed in, wearing a chic minidress and carrying a crocodile leather bag. Worth an entire apartment. The very apartment Ethan had bought for her with stolen money. Amelia, what have you done? Why isn't Mom answering her phone? Why was Ethan arrested? Did you bribe the police with our money? Yes. Regina threw her bag on my desk and ordered imperiously. Listen. I just flew in from London. In a month, I'm marrying the son of an oil tycoon in Houston. Write me a check for $50 million right now. I need the money for the wedding and a party at a 5-star hotel. If you don't, I'll have Ethan divorce you immediately and kick you out onto the street. I wasn't angry. I was amused. Her blind arrogance was the perfect legacy left by Deborah. $50 million. I leisurely flipped a page in a file. Regina, you've studied in England for 3 years. You should at least have some understanding of international law and finance. Right. Do you know where your brother got the money to send you every month? Regina scowled. The money my brother earned, where else would he get it? He's a genius, you know. Money is nothing to him. And you're just a lucky orphan who got to live in our family. What right do you have to ask? A genius, come on. I smirked and turned the Taitian computer screen toward her. This is the audit report Marcus compiled in London. Tell me what your prestigious education was really like. In 3 years, you didn't even attend 10 lectures. You spent your brother's money on bottles of 10 lectures. Dom Perignon from the clubs in Soho. You gambled and even used drugs in a rented apartment in Kensington. Regina's face began to change. From flushed red to deathly white, then to a purplish hue. You spied on me? You dare to slander me? Slander? I turned on a video. It showed Regina at a wild party in London, with a syringe in her hand. I have a full file on your academic fraud, your purchase diploma, and your medical to records from the rehab clinic. And Regina, do you think your wedding to the tycoon's son will still happen? I picked up my phone and sent a large file with a single click. I just sent all these documents to your future groom's family and the university administration. Do you think a prestigious Houston family will accept a drug-addicted, fraudulent con artist with a brother in prison as their daughter-in-law? You venomous snake, I'll kill you. Regina lunged at me in a rage, but Marcus promptly stepped forward and pinned her arms behind her back. That's not all. I stood up and approached her. All the money your brother sent you was stolen. Legally, it's an illegally acquired asset. I have filed a planned request for its confiscation. The London apartment has been sealed. The bag you're holding, the dress you're wearing, too. All assets will be seized to pay off the shareholders' debts. Currently, you are an accomplice and are jointly liable for your brother's $50 million debt. Regina collapsed to the floor. The expensive handbag fell from her hand. Like garbage. All her pride vanished in an instant. Just then, her phone rang. Her fiancé's furious screams came from the other end. You're a liar. Your whole family is a bunch of criminals. The wedding is off. Don't you dare come near Houston. Regina was speechless. The engagement was off. An uncertain future, a mountain of debt. She suddenly realized that without her brother's dirty money, she was nothing. Amelia, I'm begging you, I'm begging you. She crawled toward me, clinging to my pants. I was wrong. That mother taught me this. She told me to despise you so you'd be intimidated. Give me at least $1 million. To escape. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to be hounded for debts. I coldly shook her hand off. Regina, the day your mother hung me from the tree, you called her and said, Mom, give her a good beating to knock the greed out of it. Her, or I won't have enough for a new watch. Do you remember that? Were you thinking about sisterly feelings then? I turned my back and waved to the security guards. Get her out and hand her over to the towel. Police waiting downstairs. She is charged with complicity in theft and possession of illegal substances. Let the law handle it. No, Amelia, I'm sorry. Regina's screams faded as she was dragged out of the office. A majestic silence once again descended on the 50th floor corridor. The last remnant of the Ashford family's arrogance had been crushed, dragging the Senate's remnants of a rotten clan down to the very bottom of the abyss of humiliation. I stood by the panorama girl, looking out at the bustling streets of New York. The sky was clear today, without a single dark cloud from the past. The storm had passed, and I was ready to clean up the last remaining debris on my visit to the prison tomorrow. The story ends here.